Welcome to the complete story of Final Fantasy XIII-2, the game many believe made up for the mistakes of the original Final Fantasy XIII by featuring a less linear story and a more engaging battle system. Us, however, we believe that Final Fantasy XIII-2 is a great sequel to an already great first installment, and it is our pleasure to continue telling the story of this often overlooked trilogy of Final Fantasy games. A story of divine proportions, transcending both time and space, as we get better acquainted with some familiar faces and make some new friends along the way. But anyway, I'm Pétur from Birds of Play, and I hope you'll join us as we revisit the complete story of Final Fantasy XIII-2. It's going to take some time to navigate this tangled web of time-traveling shenanigans, but I hope you'll stay with us from now until the end of history. Prologue. She had embraced her destiny and fought the false gods who would enslave mankind. It was a battle that changed the world, wherein a brave few defeated humanity's false overlords and saved mankind from destruction. Without the power of the gods to hold it aloft, Cocoon, the floating continent, fell from the sky, and the cradle of humanity became locked in a frozen embrace with Grand Pulse, a realm of monsters. The tyranny of the gods was lifted, and a new age began. But she did not see the new dawn. Instead, she disappeared at the very moment of her triumph. Finding herself in an unfamiliar place, Lightning becomes the guardian of divine Etro, the goddess of death, standing watch over her legacy in Valhalla, a place that exists between the real world and nothingness, as the goddess continues to fade from existence, an endless realm awash with sadness, whose shores are untouched by the currents of time. Wading through the still water, a man by the name of Kaya's Ballad lays the lifeless body of a young girl called Yule to rest in the ocean, lamenting that she must suffer so for eternity. Turning his attention to Lightning, Kaya summons forth an army of beasts from the rift, challenging her to a battle, and she answers the call by riding forth with her own army of summoned monsters and eidolons. As they cross swords in a siege, which engulfs all of Valhalla, Lightning witnesses Etro's gate, the portal to the mortal realm, open over the temple, and sees a familiar figure fall from the sky. She recognizes it as a young man she had previously seen in a vision, Noel Kreis. Jumping off a ledge and summoning Bahamut, Lightning saves Noel from his fall. But with no indication of stopping, Caius continues his relentless assault, returning as Chaos Bahamut to continue the fight. Lightning tasks Noel with finding her sister, Sarah Farron, and bringing her to her side in Valhalla. She summons a Moogle named Mog for Noel to give to Sarah. But before they can talk any further, Kaya summons a meteor over Etro's temple. Summoning Odin, Lightning thrusts herself into the meteor's path as it crushes the temple, and Noel leaps into a time gate to find Sarah in the past, his desperate hope being to change the future. Episode 1. A World Without Cocoon. New Bodom, 003 AF. In New Bodom in the year 3 AF, 3 years after the fall of Cocoon, Sarah dreams of Lightning's battle with Caius and the events that transpired in Valhalla. Having been torn from the fabric of history, everyone except Sarah believes that Lightning is gone forever. She clings to a different truth, which only she can remember. As a crystalline meteorite falls from the sky, Sarah awakens to find her clothes mysteriously transformed, and as she heads outside, she witnesses the village turn into a barren wasteland. When the village finally reverts back to normal, it seems as though time has stopped. And what's worse, that New Bodom has fallen under attack by monsters. Once time resumes, Sarah finds herself in the midst of the battle, where she is saved by none other than Noel. With no time to talk, Noel hands Sarah a weapon, allowing her to fight off the monsters by his side. Sarah's weapon then transforms into her new Moogle companion, Mog, which Noel explains is a gift from Lightning, much to Sarah's surprise. At the crash site of the meteorite, Noel reveals he is from 700 years in the future, a time where Cocoon has fallen out of the sky and made Grand Pulse all but uninhabitable. He tells Sarah that lightning is waiting for her in a place called Valhalla and offers to take her to her, but Sarah's friends remain skeptical. Placing Sarah's hand on the meteorite, Noel reveals that it is really a time gate, earning him the benefit of the doubt, at least from Sarah. The next day, Noel and Sarah use Morg to search around the village for an artifact that will allow them to use the gate. As they look around, Sarah is reminded of how the past changed when lightning disappeared, and how her fiancé, Snow, was the only one who believed her, setting out on a mission by himself to find her. After finding the artifact, Sarah asks Noel what he is hoping to achieve, and he tells her that he is fighting for a future that has people in it. He tells her that he lived at the end of days and was the very last child to be born, eventually becoming the last human in existence. As he dreamed of changing the future, he was invited to Valhalla and given the chance to make his dream a reality. Hearing his story, Sarah decides to trust Noel and sets off on a journey with him and Morg to find her sister. Unbeknownst to them, however, they are being watched by Caius and his companion, Yule. Episode 2: Unseen Intruder. Brescia Ruins, 005 AF. Noel and Sarah travel through the Historia Crux, the crossroads of the time continuum, to the Brescia Ruins, on Cocoon 2 years in the future in the year 5 AF. During this time, a provisional government has replaced the Sanctum, Cocoon's former governing entity, led by the fal'Cie, and a scientific organization calling itself the Academy has begun searching ruins for ancient technological secrets. As they arrive, they are forced to do battle with an invisible giant called Atlas, a war machine from the future that has appeared in the wrong time period due to a time paradox. Sarah and Noel are arrested for entering a restricted area, but they are soon freed by an Academy scientist named Alyssa Seidel. Alyssa asks them to help them defeat Atlas before it shuts down the site, as she is still hoping to find something in the ruins. By destroying the crystal atop Atlas's head, Noel and Sarah defeat the giant war machine and solve the paradox, restoring the Brescia Ruins to their former glory. Afterwards, they discover what Alyssa was looking for: a grave belonging to a friend who died in the Purge 5 years ago, when the Sanctum sought to eradicate any remnant of the dreaded Pulse fal'Cie on Cocoon. Alyssa is relieved to see that her own name is not engraved on the memorial, and reveals she often dreams of having died in the Purge. She often wonders whether she really did die, making the life she is living now an illusion. Upon hearing Alyssa's story, Sarah laments how the Purge happened because she was made of Polus the Sea, setting things in motion all those years ago. Episode 3, Part 1, Prophecy of Hope. Yashchas Massif, 010 AF. Sarah, Morg, and Noel travel to the Yashchas Massif in the year 10 AF, where the sky is darkened by perpetual eclipse. Noel tells Sarah that 500 years before his time, the fal'Cie Fenrir appeared and blocked out the sun, and Sarah figures that Fenrir appearing in 10 AF must be another paradox. Together they journey to the ancient ruins of Padra, which was once a flourishing center of an advanced culture. There they meet the director of Academy Research Team Alpha, a 24-year-old Hope Estime, a former compatriot of Lightning and Snow who joined them in bringing down Cocoon's fal'Cie. Hope greets Sarah by name, and she is stunned to see him all grown up. Hope also seems to recognize Noel, even though they have never met before, and he tells them that he has been expecting them after their visit to the Brescia Ruins 5 years earlier. They are joined by Alyssa, who is now working as Hope's assistant. They learn from Hope and Alyssa about the people of Padra, a nation led by the seeress Yule, who had foretold of the city's destruction, inciting conflict among its people and ultimately seeing the prophecies fulfilled. With an ancient recording apparatus called the Oracle Drive, they then witness distorted images of lightning during battle with Caius in Valhalla, this being the first tangible evidence which supports Sarah's story about what happened to her sister. Using a new artifact given to them by Hope, Sarah, Morg, and Noel enter a time gate to solve the paradox, causing the eclipse that is also distorting the Oracle Drive, perhaps enabling them to learn more about lightning and how to reach her. They wind up in Oeva during the year 200 AF, the hometown of Vanille and Fang, who sacrificed himself to erect Cocoon's crystal pillar to prevent it from falling onto Grand Pulse. However, the town appears to be getting sucked into a void, as space-time has doubled and twisted in on itself, leading the past and future to be tangled together as one. After solving the multiple paradoxes present within the distorted timescape, they discover another Oracle Drive at an old schoolhouse at the edge of town. The Oracle Drive projects images of Sarah's reunion with Lightning, which only she remembers. Suddenly, Caius appears along with Yule and disrupts the image. Noel runs to Yule's side, but Caius reveals there is more than one Yule existing across different eras, and that she is not the Yule Noel knows. Yule has been watching them through her visions as a seeress, and Caius says that he is there to punish Sarah and Noel for tampering with the timeline, stating that they will pay for their crimes in blood. Noel refuses to fight Caius, but Caius retorts by telling Noel that times have changed and that he is not the Caius he once knew. Before Caius can deal the finishing blow, however, Yule exclaims that it is too late and that history has already been changed. Having failed, Yule and Caius leave Oeba, and Noel and Sarah use the artifact they leave behind to bid farewell to this time period. Having solved the paradox in Oeba, they have also solved the paradox in the Yashjas Massif. Sarah and Noel arrive in an alternate version of the Yashjas Massif in the year 10 AF, also known as 1X AF, where the eclipse never happened. There they meet another Yule, who cryptically tells them that she and Sarah are the same in how they can show others the way. Hope and Alyssa are still at the ruins, and the four reunite, even though Hope and Alyssa don't remember having met them before, causing Sarah and Noel to repeat their first meeting. Hope shows them the recording in the Oracle Drive, which this time displays clear images of Lightning battling Caius in Valhalla, proving to them that she is in fact alive in that place during that time. With little time to rejoice, the Oracle Drive proceeds to show them an updated prophecy. This time, one that depicts Cocoon's crystal pillar crumbling. Mortified by this revelation, Hope commits himself to working hard to prevent it from happening, having the Academy prepare for the time Cocoon will fall to try to mitigate the damage. Meanwhile, Sarah and Noel must continue to solve the paradoxes, Hope believing that when the paradoxes are eliminated, Cocoon will remain safe in the sky. Once Sarah and Noel leave, Yule dies in Caius' arms, and he carries her body away, lamenting how many times he must bear witness to this tragic outcome. As they try to return to the Historia Crux, Sarah and Noel end up in a rift between gates known as the Void Beyond, where they briefly explore their surroundings before returning to the Historia Crux to continue their journey. Episode 3, Part 2, Oathbrand, Sunleth Waterscape, 300 AF. They travel to the Sunleth Waterscape in 300 AF, where Sarah has a vision of Snow in danger. Disturbed by what she has seen, Sarah rushes forward and is eventually reunited with Snow, who is battling a giant flan called Royal Ripeness. Together they defeat the gargantuan beast, but before they can celebrate their victory, the monster completely regenerates itself. After the battle, Noel demands that Snow explains why he left Sarah, and Snow reveals that the reason Sarah never heard back from him is that he has also become a time traveler. He explains Lightning appeared to him in a dream, asking him to protect Cocoon's pillar, and in turn, Vanille and Fang resting inside of it. Together they follow a trail of mini-flan and discover two artifacts that will help them solve the paradox, causing royal ripeness to grow. However, as they get ready to fill in the rest of the puzzle elsewhere, Snow isn't able to enter the time gate with them, instead staying behind to keep a look on things. Noel, Morg and Sarah then visit the Colosseum without him and obtain the White Hole fragment, the source of a local paradox, from the Arbiter of Time, a servant of the Goddess of Death, who has been charged with being the keeper of the Colosseum, the Arbiter telling them that the day of reckoning has not yet come. Next, they venture to the Archiled Steppe at an unknown time period, where they learn from a group of hunters that a feral is sucking flan into its mouth, summoning them to the Sunleth Waterscape. Defeating the feral, the trio receives the Black Hole fragment and returns to the Sunleth Waterscape, only to find Snow not waiting for them like he had promised. Instead, they find him fighting the mutant tomato, the flan's true form, unaffected by a paradox. Once again presenting a common front, they defeat it together. Snow apologizes for his recklessness and asks Noel to look after Sarah for him. Suddenly, Snow begins glowing, and Noel says it must be because the paradox has been resolved and things that shouldn't exist in this time are disappearing. As Sarah is once again torn away from her lover, she notices a l'Cie brand on Snow's arm before he fades away. Sarah mourns the fact that Snow has once again been turned into a l'Cie, but Noel conjectures that Snow himself may have asked to become a l'Cie to get the power he needed to protect his friends and carry out his task. Regardless of the reason, Sarah vows to save him from his fate, just like he did when she became a l'Cie. Noel, Sarah, and Mog enter a time gate and once again emerge in the void beyond, this time deciding to take a break. Noel tells Sarah about how the Farseer tribe, from which he hails from, always had a girl with the same appearance, voice, and power, who was always called Yule. They then end up in Serendipity, a place which hides on the border of life and death, between oblivion and eternity, which houses a palace of wondrous entertainment. Sarah and Noel are flabbergasted by what they see, but nevertheless extend their short respite to briefly explore this fun-filled world before resuming their mission. Episode 4: Skyborn Paradise. Academia 400 AF. Once they are ready to continue their journey, they travel to the city of Academia in 400 AF, a highly advanced Paulsian city whose foundations were laid by none other than hope. The city is under the control of a proto-fal'Cie, a man-made fal'Cie, created to oversee the workings of the city. As the two of them admire the impressive metropolis and the combined human effort it represents across centuries, they are spotted by the fal'Cie, who retaliates by transforming the citizens of Academia into Seath, monsters to work its will and put a stop to the intruders. As they look for safety, Sarah, Noel, and Mog run into Caius, who tells them they are contradictions in the timeline and that he has every reason to eliminate them. He tells them they met in a tower 200 years earlier and that they died there after learning the forbidden history is sealed inside. Now that they are here, alive and well, they have caused a paradox. Having prepared for their arrival, Caius has enlisted the assistance of the proto-fal'Cie and leaves them to die with a band of Seath. After defeating the Seath, Sarah, Noel, and Mog give chase after Caius, but he seems to disappear every time they catch up to him. They run into Yule being attacked by several Seath, and after coming to her rescue, Yule tells them about her vision, telling them that if she were to live, it would bring a contradiction to the timeline, meaning she must die. At this point, Sarah realizes Yule is dying because they are causing a paradox, and falls to her knees overwhelmed. Yule tells them Caius was never in the city and dies in Noel's arms, leaving them an artifact which he can use at a nearby gate to travel to the Augusta Tower in 200 AF. The Augusta Tower is the central information processing facility of the Academy, the entire edifice being occupied by the machinery of an artificial intelligence. In the tower, they spot Caius ascending its levels. As they give chase, they discover that the tower's staff is made up of artificial duplicates of real people, and meet a duplicate of Alyssa, who reveals the forbidden history from the year 13 AF. During that time, the Augusta Tower was built as a part of the Proto-fal'Cie project, which is a part of Hope's plan to re-levitate Cocoon without the crystal pillar. However, the tower's artificial intelligence rebelled against its creators and killed everyone, including Hope and Alyssa. Afterwards, the AI constructed the Proto-fal'Cie and created duplicates to cover up the soulless massacre. Sarah, Noel, and Mog make their way to the top floor, where they meet the same Yule they'd previously met in Oeba, who gives them an artifact, saying she believes in them. Yule reveals that Caius is immortal and has knowledge of the entire timeline from having heard the visions of the Seeresses. She tells them that the Seeresses possess the eyes of Etro, and that inside Caius beats the heart of chaos. Furthermore, she explains lightning's disappearing from Grand Pulse was caused by the future being changed, and that if Sarah and Noel continue to solve the paradoxes, the past will return to the way Sarah remembers it. She reveals that the Caius they encountered at the Academia was a fake, created by the sentient AI, and that they saw the real Caius at the tower. Sarah and Noel then venture into the core to defeat the AI. Yule sees the future where everyone is happy and dies smiling. Caius arrives and mourns for Yule, vowing to remember her pain, carving it into his heart together with the memories of every other Yule cursed to die this way. Sarah and Noel arrive at the tower's core and encounter the proto-fal'C Adam, which is using the AI and a paradox to keep itself functional, allowing it to be reincarnated every time Sarah and Noel defeat it. As a last resort, Sarah shouts at Hope for creating the proto-fal'C. Her yelling reaches out to Hope in the past via the Oracle Drive, and the proto-fal'C ceases to exist after Hope decides not to build it in the first place. Having resolved the paradox, Sarah has yet another vision, a brief flash of them and Caius in the void beyond. Sarah, Noel, and Morg end up in academia in a new timeline in 4XXAF, where everything is going well, now that the proto-fal'C is no more. There, they are greeted by Hope and Alyssa, who used a time capsule Hope invented to get to the academia in this time period without aging. Back in 1XAF, Hope had begun the new Cocoon project to create a new Cocoon to replace the old one after it is destroyed when the crystal pillar collapses in the future. After seeing the 13th arc and the Oracle Drive in 13AF, he and Alyssa entered the time capsule and awoke in the academia to learn how it can be made airborne. They discover that for the project to succeed, Hope requires 5 graviton cores, hidden throughout the timeline, to make his new Cocoon float. Sarah and Noel retrieve the graviton cores one by one, and as they return, Alyssa gives them an artifact so they can use the new time gate back in town. Hope and Alyssa meet them at the gate to see them off, promising to meet again a century in the future, once the construction of the new Cocoon is finished. When Sarah and Noel enter the gate, however, Alyssa smirks to herself, but only Morg notices. When Morg follows after Sarah and Noel, he and Sarah get separated from Noel in the Historia Crux, the reason being that Alyssa betrayed them and tricked them into Caius' trap because she is a living paradox and won't exist in the corrected timeline. Episode 5. Time marches on. The Void Beyond. Sarah and Noel wind up in the Void Beyond, where Morg is phased out, becoming invisible to Sarah, and Noel is impaled by Caius. Sarah goes on alone and encounters several Yules, all from different time periods. Each Yule tells Sarah certain truths about her, the l'Cie who saved Cocoon, and history's change, ending in the revelation that, like Yule, Sarah has the eyes of Etro, the ability to see the future, a skill granted by the goddess herself. The last Yule tells Sarah that whenever people die in the Void Beyond, their passing takes the shape of their heart's desires, and warns her that each time she changes the timeline, she brings herself closer to death. The last Yule transforms into Caius, and Sarah is forced to do battle with him. He tells her about Noel's fate, and that he is now at peace. But Sarah refuses to believe him, telling Caius that Noel would never give in to him. Caius calls her a child of miracles, guided by Etro, and that each time she fulfills a wish of her own heart, someone else's dream is shattered, and that as she conjures miracles, it sows the seeds of tragedy in other lives. He tells her that as the result of Etro freeing her and the other l'Cie on the day of Ragnarok, the lives of the Yules all throughout history were cut short. Caius plans to dam the river of time and tear down the foundation of history by sending everything back to Valhalla, so that he can save Yule from her fate of constantly being reborn to die before her time. By slaying the goddess and returning everything to Valhalla, Yule will be free for eternity, in a place without time or a future. Caius then impales Sarah with his blade, just like he had Noel. Sarah, in her old clothes, is awakened in New Bodom by her friends. She is confused as they tell her she never left on a journey, and that they have never heard of Noel. When she heads home, she finds Snow waiting for her. It seems she is in a dream, where everything is the way she wants it to be. She is married to Snow, and lightning never disappeared. However, when the fake lightning attempts to convince Sarah to remain in the dream world forever, Sarah remembers that the real lightning is fighting in Valhalla, waiting for her, and refuses. causing the fake lightning to disperse into chaos. Sarah hears a familiar voice giving her words of encouragement and encounters Vanille and Fang. The pair reveals they were able to reach Sarah since she rejected the fake lightning, and that they are here to help her escape her dream in the void beyond, telling her that Noel needs her help to escape from his dream. Leaving a space-time distortion to lead Sarah to Noel, Vanille and Fang then return to their dream inside Cocoon's pillar, as Sarah heads into the distortion to find Noel and save him. Noel is caught within his own dream world, based on his past memories from his home of the dying world in 700 AF. Sarah follows Noel and witnesses his conversation with Caius and Yule. Caius tells Noel he must kill him to become Yule's next guardian and receive his Heart of Chaos, a manifestation of Etro, given to him by the goddess centuries ago to make him immortal. Should it stop beating, the goddess will die once again, unleashing the unrestrained chaos of Valhalla into the mortal world, destroying history in the process. Noel refuses, and Caius forces him into a battle, but once Caius defeats him, he realizes Noel is not strong enough to kill him. Caius then uses the affinity he has with chaos to depart for Valhalla to slay the goddess Etro, so that he can free Yule from her endless cycle of reincarnation, abandoning Yule as her guardian for the first time. Sarah witnesses Noel talking to Yule, who is a vision of the future, and dies in his embrace, promising him they will meet again. Noel pursues Caius and gets drawn into the sky by a light guiding him to Valhalla, but Sarah catches up to him and helps Noel awaken from his dream. Sarah wants to continue their journey, but Noel is reluctant, because he has been reminded of why Yule died. Every time a seeress has a vision of the future, a piece of her life will vanish, and if she has a vision strong enough, she will die. Since Sarah has the same ability, she too is in danger of dying the same way each time she and Noel change the timeline, but Sarah is willing to take the risk to save the future. Sarah and Noel return to where Yule died, and the Oracle Drive shows them her dying vision of Noel fighting to save the future, and the two of them reuniting. A distortion appears, and Morg returns to normal. Morg reveals his soul was trapped in the void beyond until lightning saved him. It is then revealed that Caius was once a pulse to see, with the focus of Yule's protection, until Etro saved him and made him immortal by giving him the Heart of Chaos. Noel and Sarah realize Caius has been plotting for centuries, using his immense power and knowledge of Yule's visions to create the paradoxes to reach his goal, the goddess's death and the world's destruction. Sarah, Noel, and Monk go through the time distortion in the dying world and end up in New Bodom in 700 AF, finding the village a desolate wasteland. There they meet the real Lightning, who's come from Valhalla. She explains everything that happened to her as the events of the day of Ragnarok and Ethros' intervention tore open a portal to another world, unleashing a torrent of chaos which dragged her away to the edge of time. Arriving in Valhalla, she could track the entire span of time, and as she gazed upon the future of mankind, she sensed Etros' divine will, becoming her guardian. She then explains what Caius is plotting. Caius is trying to destroy Cocoon, so that the surge of departing souls would force Etros' gate wide open and send waves of chaos to erupt from Valhalla. Chaos would then engulf the world, turning it into a place where time, life, and death don't exist, essentially remaking the world in Valhalla's image. Noel realizes Caius is doing this for Yule's sake, to stop her from suffering her cycle of death and rebirth. To prevent this, Caius must be stopped in both Valhalla and the mortal world. Since Lightning can't do this alone, she needs help from Sarah and Noel. She tells them that in the year 500 AF, Hope will launch the new Cocoon, and Caius will attempt to bring it and the old Cocoon down in one fell swoop. Lightning tells them that if they were to save the new Cocoon and stop Caius, the timeline would be restored. Morg reveals a new gate to take Noel and Sarah to 500 AF, and Lightning prepares to return to Valhalla to face Caius. Sarah asks her if they will be together again once everything is over, but Lightning only smiles and replies, "One thing at a time, Sarah." before taking her leave. The last episode, Promised Eternity, Academia 500 AF. Sarah, Noel, and Mog arrive at Academia in the year 500 AF, the time of the prophecy, but the city has become a labyrinth of chaos, and the populace has been evacuated to Hope's new Cocoon. As they journey through the area, they hear Yule's voice, warning them not to fight Caius, and to subsequently kill Etro. Reaching the Academy headquarters, Caius, who has arrived from Valhalla, attacks them as Chaos Bahamut, along with the summoned monsters, but they are saved by Hope. They give chase to Caius on an airship, piloted by Saj Katzroy, another one of their time-traveling friends, and Sarah and Noel fight Caius as Chaos Bahamut, as well as in his human form. A portal in the sky leading to Valhalla opens and Caius flies into it, inviting them to follow suit. Hope is eager to go after him, but Sarah insists he must stay behind and protect Vanille, Fang, and his new Cocoon. Sarah, Noel, and Mog jump into the portal and encounter Caius on the shores of Valhalla, once again engaging him in battle. They defeat him, but he still swears to stop Yule's cycle of reincarnation by destroying Etro. Noel attempts to convince Caius Yule wouldn't want the world destroyed, and that she kept returning out of her own will because she wanted to be with him. After Noel cuts him down, Caius transforms into his ultimate form, Jet Bahamut, and blasts at Sarah and Noel. The pair falls into an abyss beneath the waves of chaos, but lightning saves them, urging them to keep hope alive. Mustering all their strength, Sarah and Noel defeat Jet Bahamut, and his supporters Garnet Bahamut and Amber Bahamut, making Caius revert back to his human form. Caius claims that if what Noel says about Yule is true, then Noel must kill him. When he refuses, Caius tries to provoke Noel by saying he has killed lightning. Caius claims to already know how everything will end and provokes Noel by lunging at Sarah. Noel intervenes, but Caius takes Noel's blade and tells him that those who change time must choose who lives and dies, and that Noel must bear the burden of the eternal paradox. Caius forces the blade through his own heart, and as he slowly disappears, Sarah and Noel realize that Caius had been consumed by sorrow over the course of centuries of watching so many Yules die, wanting to die in Valhalla to end their suffering. With the final paradox resolved, the timeline is returned to normal, and Sarah, Noel, and Mog return to Grand Pulse in 500 AF before the time gates disappear. After Caius' defeat, Saj removes Fang and Vanille from the crystal pillar before the old Cocoon falls. Meanwhile, the new Cocoon, named Bunivelse, rises into the sky as a new home for the human race. Sarah, Noel, and Mog return from Valhalla, where they are greeted by Saj and his airship. The gate to Valhalla closes, marking the end of their journey, and Sarah thanks Noel for everything. Suddenly, Sarah has a vision, robbing her of her life, leading her to die in Noel's arms just before Hope arrives from Academia to greet them. Noel tells him that as the future changes, the past changes as well, and that the effects ripple outward, up and down the timeline. The seers being forced to see it all, the last vision having killed Sarah. The sky darkens and Mog grows weak, telling them that the goddess is gone. Noel remembers Caius' warning about Etro and the Heart of Chaos, realizing he played right into Caius' scheme. The chaos of Valhalla is unleashed, flooding into the world, warping the timeline, and destroying the past. Saj's story, heads or tails. While making a routine flight in their airship, Saj and Daj are sucked into a vortex caused by a paradox, and the two are separated while floating through the Historia Crux. Saj searches for Daj and finds himself in Serendipity, whose owner explains that Saj and his son are between life and death. He compares the situation to the middle of a coin flip, where the coin is landed on neither heads nor tails. The owner reveals that Saj must gamble and bring the future he wishes to see, one where he'll be reunited with Daj. The owner eventually tells Sarge that he has collected enough fortune medals to change the rules of space-time and have the world conform to his desires. Sarge is reunited with his son, but the owner then explains that the universe's timeline is being distorted. He tells him that the future has been determined and the possibility of change has disappeared. He demonstrates this by dropping many coins to a casino table, all of which land on tails. Sarge demands the owner send him somewhere he can make a difference to protect the future for his son, and the owner opens a gate to Academia 500 AF, where Sarge and Dodge assist Sarah and Noel in pursuing Kaya's ballad and help Hope S-Time and the Academy salvage Fang and Manil's crystal before the crystal pillar collapses. Snow's story: Perpetual Battlefield. After leaving Sarah and Noel in the sunlit waterscape in 300 AF, Snow enters the Void Beyond and uses Shiva to enter the Colosseum. There he fights alongside Lightning against many foes, including Gilgamesh and Ultros. Sarah and Noel arrive, and Sarah challenges Snow to prove how strong she has become on her journey through time. At first, Snow is reluctant to fight his fiancée, but he eventually accepts her challenge. After the fight, the Arbiter of Time reveals his true self as Valhalla and attacks Sarah and Noel. Once defeated, he recognizes their strength and gives them permission to visit the Colosseum whenever they please. Sarah tries to help Snow leave the Colosseum as well, but he is unable to, as he is tied to it by chaos. The two promise to reunite eventually, and Snow remains in the Colosseum with its other inhabitants. Lightning's story: Requiem of the Goddess. After being defeated by Caius, while experiencing a vision of Sarah's death, Lightning finds her sister's spirit held hostage by Shadow Yule, a chaos-based entity who tells her that Sarah is the same as them, and that she will stay with them until time is destroyed, and that when the world ends, she will end with them. Refusing Lightning's demands to release Sarah's soul, Shadow Yule conjures Caius forth to fight her, while telling Lightning she is the one who caused Sarah's death by sending her out on her journey. Realizing she had put her sister on the path that led to her demise, Lightning is about to give up, when Sarah's spirit appears before her. Sarah explains she knew what would happen, and she has no regrets of making the choice to continue. Sarah asks Lightning to always remember her, as she promises they will meet again. After coming to her senses in Etros Temple, Lightning's hope for the future is renewed. As the chaos blends Grand Pulse and Valhalla, Lightning ascends to the goddess's throne and transforms into an indestructible crystal epitaph to preserve the world's existence in Etros' place along with Sarah's memory, waiting for a time at the end of eternity when she will awaken and be reunited with her sister. Secret ending: the goddess is dead. Unbeknownst to everyone, Caius remains alive and within Etros' throne room in the Void Beyond. He gloats how Sarah and Noel unknowingly help him create a new world where both he and Yule are freed from the respective curses as the chaos erupts from Etros' temple. Without Etro to hold it back, the chaos within the unseen realm has bled into the visible world as Etros' gate has been flung open, resulting in Valhalla manifesting on Grand Pulse, just like he had planned. And that's the complete story of Final Fantasy XIII-2, which will of course be continued in Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy XIII. I hope you liked the video, and that you're excited to see the story's conclusion in the next one. Special thanks to David Lee Jenkins, who supported the making of this video with a super thanks here on YouTube. It means a lot to us that people are willing to support us, so don't be afraid to be more like David. You can even tell us what you'd like to see. We're whores. But until next time,